So I think this IPCC message and this green economy report from UNEP, I think these two graphs are contradicting each other. So I think we need further work to see which one we should promote. But for me, I think we should promote this, but we have to identify what are the conditions for this to happen. Yes. Yes, I have 3 minutes. So this is a tool for, and what I was interested in was whether would this be useful for developing country. Next slide, please. This is a graph showing that this idea can be even applied to developing countries. This shows that just one example. If we increase carbon tax $10 per ton in China and reduce corporate tax in China, then China will have even 1.9% higher economic growth. This is just one example. So there's a possibility of double dividend. Next slide, please. That's why I believe that we need a global partnership for this, because it has to be a partnership between the government to support developing countries on this issue. Next slide, please. Environment governance issue, I would like to emphasize here that we have talked about SDG as a one of the main outcomes from Rio, but I also would like to emphasize here that I hope SDG would not become another environmental goal. SDG means economic, social, and environment. It shouldn't be only about environmental pillar. So I hope that environmental governance issue, I think the main issue is how to integrate 3 pillars rather than just strengthening one pillar. I think that is a very important point. Next slide. ESCA would like to follow up on the regional consultation for sustainable development goals and also a member state based on a request from member state to promote low carbon green growth. And we would like to be a regional platform for a balanced integration of 3 pillars of sustainable development. And next slide, please. So if you have any question for this, we hope that roadmap can be a tool for low carbon growth partnership and knowledge platform which the Japanese government is promoting. For the full report, you can go to this website or Google it. Yeah, thank you very much for attention.
Dr. Raymond, thank you. You had 1 more minute. You had 1 more minute left still. Now, for the green growth strategy, he has for many, many years been asserting for this. And as he has mentioned, during the Rio+20, the perspective of the developing economies towards the green economy, there was too narrow and skewed, and he has been very serious in trying to suggest that you should to think more broadly. And double dividend is something that he has emphasized several times, and also the high growth and the greener economy. For instance, the tax neutrality and eco-tax reform can also be realized. So these are the things that are good food for thought for all of us. We need to think no more in depth. So I have asked 20 to 25 minutes for the speech because I wanted to receive as many questions as possible from the floor. And that is the reason why I have asked you to economize. And also to Mr. Shrestha, if I could ask you for just 10 minutes, please.
Thank you, Professor Hirano. As introduced, I had the privilege to serve in the Secretariat. I witnessed and also participated in the joys as well as frustrations and sometimes anger of the negotiation process. The G77 in China, Europe, and all the other groups. So it was a mind-opening experience for me to participate. So some of the comments to add to the discussion of what Professor Nathan and Mr. Chung has said, to add to the discussions, I wanted to make some points. First, Dr. Nathan briefly mentioned the Rio dialogues. I think out of that Rio+20 conference, this is one of the innovations that came out of the conference. As you know, there were 10 topics that were selected by the public. and 3 recommendations for each of the topics. There were about 1.2 million people that participated in the social media. Physically, there were about 2,000 people present for all the discussions that took place. So beside the government negotiations and other things, the People's Summit and other things that happened, this was one of the innovation. I think Brazil has a resolution in place to ensure that all UN conferences in the future have public participation and to make use of the new technologies we have for a wider participation beyond just government representatives. And if this resolution works, I think this would be an innovation in the future conferences. Second, I think we are in the UN a week after the Rio+20, the Secretary General, after consultation with all the UN heads, concluded that there were 7 main conclusions where the UN will be focusing on coming out of Rio. First, of course, he emphasized that Rio was a success. He said it 3 times to the General Assembly. So I just go through the 7 because I think this is where the focus of the UN will be. First, he said that we came out with a strong political commitment for sustainable development. And all UN agencies will focus on sustainable development from this day forth, he said. Second, that we need to build on the MDGs, look at the SDGs for a post-2015 framework, that these 2 must come together for one framework, one set of goals for the international community. Third, gender equality and women's empowerment, emphasis in all the programs of UN. Fourth, that governments alone cannot do implementation, action is lacking, and partnerships are re-emphasized, especially the civil society and within that the private sector. Fifth, the institutional framework, the high-level political framework, and the UNEP strengthening, especially the language that will go in at the next General Assembly, the 67th General Assembly. And sixth, this is the first time collectively the international community has accepted that the SCP, the consumption, production, and the metrics beyond GDP, including the role of the green economy, it will be a priority in the common collective program of the UN. And seventh, the right to food. He emphasized that all peoples of this planet have the right to food. So this is a new right that would be added. So these were the 7, I think, that the UN as a collectively has concluded as the key outcomes of Rio+20. I am sure, I think many of us are happy, a lot are sad, having bigger expectations. But I think we need to go back to the resolution of the governments that decided on Rio+20. If we look at that resolution, it says reconfirm, reaffirm. It does not talk of anything new. So the ambition was already low when it started. Second, the Secretary General in the beginning of his 2nd term went to the General Assembly with an action agenda. And he already stated there that sustainable development must be the overarching goal. Then this was reconfirmed again by the Global Sustainability Panel that was headed by Presidents of South Africa and Finland. That sustainable development is overarching, and SDGs is a means to prioritize the international action to achieve sustainable development.